Yo, what's platinum?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
I'm
Hey,
RowLow,
what's going on, everybody?
and this is Pool House
I'm Tall
Vibes,
Hey there.
where we talk about everything.
And anything. And anything.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, hey.
Hey,
Oh,
all right.
That sounds pretty good.
Pool House Vibes.
Yeah, Pool House vibes.
Hi, how are you today?
Pool House Vibes, episode number
7.
Hey, and we have a special guest in the building. Tall Josh, why don't you?
Yeah, we have Astrid. You were in the Marines.
Yes.
And you're now a
Scientist.
scientist. I was going to say a student of science.
That's the most interesting thing to me, personally, is the science aspect. What element, or not element, but what field of science are you particularly studying at the moment, or even practicing?
Okay, so I got my degree, my bachelor's in molecular and cellular biology. But currently I'm working as a chemist. And that's because to get that degree, you have to take a ton of chemistry classes, and the position that I'm currently in became available, and they offered me a good benefits and a good benefit package, so I kind of went that route. But before that, I was working as a protein and antibody purification scientist for a little less than a year after I got my degree. While I was getting my degree, though, I did research. I did immunology and endocrinology research. I was actually going to go and get my PhD, but after 6 years of hardcore schooling and research and writing,
Right.
I was burnt out. So
can
I
only
decided I think I'm going to go work in industry for a little bit and kind of get a break. And working 40 hours a week is more of a break than doing hardcore research. So that's kind of how I am where I am right now.
Now, how does one go about, you did all your work, you did your school. How do you go about saying that's the job I want? Like, you just did you read the description and just be like, nah, yeah, that sounds good? Or were you in search for a particular field or spot that you wanted to go into?
It's so funny because I actually had when I was a protein and antibody purification scientist, I really loved that job. I loved the crew. I loved that job, and I was really good at it. But I used to, when I was a student, I also worked at a community college for the biology department, and the biology chair and all the employees there, they really liked me and my work ethic. And so when this position became available to pretty much be the lead chemistry tech there, I had 3 or 4 people reach out to me and say, hey, this position is becoming available. It's full-time. It's got good benefits. It just happened to be close to my house as well. And so they really were like, you should apply. And I'm like, but I have a good job right now. I don't really need another job. But the good thing about this position, it offers flexibility, and being a mom, you kind of need a job that's a little bit more flexible sometimes. And so that's kind of why I ended up in this position. And also, I'm going to be working on my master's in bioengineering. So this job will actually help with my schedule and my work-life balance. So that's pretty much where I am.
Now, do you feel being, I guess, privy to a lot of the realms within molecular biology and a lot of the, I would say, the scientific element of what we deal with on a daily basis? Do you feel sometimes that you're paranoid when it comes to your kids, or is it kid or kids?
Yes, I have two. I have two girls. I have 2 girls. So I know scientists that are kind of like germaphobes, and they're super crazy. You gotta wash your hands, and I mean, you should always wash your hands. I'm not saying don't wash your hands. Wash your hands. But because I did 2.5 years of immunology research, and I understand that the immune system gets stronger, right? Yes. So being hyper clean is not the best thing. Examples in hospitals, you see crazy bacteria that because you wipe out all the weak bacteria,
they become anaerobic.
All the super bacteria survive. And so when it comes to my kids, yes, obviously I want them to wash their hands and I want them to be clean, but at the same time, they want to play in the dirt and they want to, just be kids. I'm not super paranoid, and also them going to school and preschool, they're just like little walking petri dishes. All the other little kids are sneezing and coughing and running around. It's just the nature of the beast. I'm not super paranoid, but I do know scientists that are like that. And I think maybe if I didn't do immunology research, that I probably would be one of those. But yeah, no, because I understand the immune system and how we are. I think I'm not as paranoid. But usually after you take like a microbiology class and you learn all about bacteria and viruses, you're like, oh my God, there's all this stuff in our food. It's everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I'm not a germaphobe.
That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump right into it because I know that you're in this field, and one of the parts of the field, or one of the aspects of this field that interests me the most is where we're headed, right?
Exactly.
And like with genome editing
Yes.
and CRISPR,
CRISPR-Cas9.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe speak a little bit about that kind of stuff. Like what's your personal experience, and where do you think that we're headed? Because
Awesome.
I know, okay, just real quick, I know that there's a potential of encountering a whole new species of human, right? Because we're gene editing, and because that's what happened with even like mosquitoes,
Yeah.
right? But I'll let you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So when I first went back to college, I was really interested in genetics and genomics because my biology professor she did genetics work, and then I went and continued to get my degree, and I went more of a different route, but I still really was interested in genetics and genomics. I did some fruit fly genomic analysis research early on when I was getting my degree. And then when I took my molecular biology class, we did talk about CRISPR-Cas9 and length, and we actually did end up using it in lab. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned CRISPR because it is where the future is going, and that's what my focus of my graduate work is going to be on CRISPR-Cas9 and bioengineering and learning exactly how to use that tool more effectively. Now, for some of you guys that don't know what CRISPR-Cas9 is, I'll give you guys a little bit of a background. So CRISPR-Cas9 was found in bacteria, and it was... they found out that that's what bacteria used as their immune system defense. Bacteria really are susceptible to viruses. There's viruses that specifically attack bacteria. And so the CRISPR-Cas9 is a protein complex that pretty much runs along the DNA of bacteria.
Prokaryotic organisms.
Yeah, and it finds an area of DNA and it recognizes it as foreign. Like, this is not bacterial DNA. This is viral DNA. I'm going to chop it out. I'm going to take it out of the bacterial genome and get rid of it. So once they found that and isolated, they were like, well, if it works in bacteria, could it work in other cell types? And so a lot of research is been being dedicated to use it as a tool, like a molecular scissors. So if you have, for example, in humans, if you have a cell that has a DNA code that has an error in it, potentially what they want to do is create a sequence that you can cut and paste. So cut out the bad sequence, put in the sequence that you want.
The Radiolab episode I listened to was kind of like, it describes it as a sort of a bounty hunter, where it was like, okay, so this, I'm going to look through and find specific codes that are incorrect, and nope, you're good. You're wrong. Cut, paste, and then paste, and have it the good code within itself to paste it in.
Yeah, there's if you can imagine this big blob protein complex and this other little one that attaches to a strand, and then there's this little segment of RNA, and that is actually what kind of gets like inserted in there. There's these little scissors, if you could imagine these little scissors within this big protein blob. The thing about CRISPR, though, is that we're trying to make sure that it is very specific and precise. Because let's say you are looking for a very specific sequence, but there's also another sequence in the genome that looks very similar to it. So it could potentially cut that out or detect that as an error when it's not. So that could cause a lot of other issues. You can potentially turn off a gene, silence a gene, or potentially put in a code that doesn't belong in there, and it can completely throw off the protein that's coded.
Create
in
a
that
new
region.
mutagen.
Yeah, you could create a mutation, a mutation you don't want. Or if you have too many mutations or too many errors, DNA errors in a cell, the cell, a lot of mammalian cells, most mammalian cells, they go through different phases. And if it finds that there's too many errors in the DNA, it will apoptose, which means it'll kill itself.
Right.
And so that's
So it happens with people with autoimmune diseases.
Yes, sometimes. Well, with autoimmune diseases, you have your immune system detecting something as and calling it foreign, so then the body attacks itself.
Right.
With apoptosis, for example, so did you guys know when you guys get sunburn? Well, you probably don't get sunburn, but when you get sunburn, Josh.
I flake a little bit. I just went snowboarding and flaked a little bit on
So
my forehead.
when you get sunburn, right? You're out in the sun, and then you notice that you start getting red, and then like hours later, it gets worse and worse and worse, and then you're like, oh my god,
It hurts.
it hurts, it burns, right? And then you start to peel, and then there's this whole terrible process. What it is, it's actually not that the sun damaged your skin. It's that the UV radiation that came from the sun penetrated all the way through into your cells and damaged the DNA. Then that DNA is so damaged that then the cell is like, okay, the DNA is so damaged, we need to kill ourselves. So that top layer of skin ends up killing itself, and that's why it gets red. And then when you have cell tissue damage, you have other cells in your body that clean up the damage. Yeah, so that's
awesome. That's like with, when I say they, it's kind of like a blanket statement, but there are certain people within positions of power that have figured out that 2.4 gigahertz can burn the skin when it's projected with like a specific UV beam or a specific beam.
I hadn't heard about that.
And it has the same effect where it's causing the DNA to kill itself, which is really interesting.
That's interesting. No, I hadn't heard
like
about
weaponized,
that.
basically weaponized targeted.
That you can't even see, because you can't see with the naked eye.
Right? So all of a sudden you're like burning, and theoretically, like when somebody just spontaneously combusts, I don't know, the conspiracies say that it's like, there were a targeted individual or something, but and there's like a weaponized satellite laser.
Even like microwaves. The way microwaves were discovered, it's actually a scientist that was in a room and there was microwaves around him, and he had a chocolate bar in his pocket and it melted. Yeah. Like it's
Wait, what?
Yeah, so microwave, you know how you put your food in the microwave and it heats up? Mm-hmm. What the microwaves are doing is the microwaves are exciting asymmetrical water molecules. So whatever, most of your food has water in it, even if it seems dry, there's water in it. Right. And so it excites those water molecules, and that's what it starts to vibrate and shake, and it heats up your food. So yeah, you could potentially do that with microwaves too. You can't see microwaves through the naked eye.
Now, this is kind of off the cusp and out of what we're talking about here, but so if you have pasta and you put a little couple of little drops of water on the pasta, are you saying that when it heats up, that it creates kind of like the whole, like bringing the pasta back to life?
Are you saying like, could you just add like a little tiny bit of water? Can you microwave pasta to turn it into pasta, like noodle-y pasta? No.
Yeah,
you'll burn the pasta. I've seen people do that. I've seen people put like dry noodles in a microwave without water. I've seen that was really funny. So you know how we have cup of noodles here in the States? Everybody knows how to use a cup of noodles. Right. You put water in the cup of noodles, stick it in the microwave. You're not supposed to microwave styrofoam, by the way, but everybody does it. But my friend, he was from Brazil, and he didn't know that you have to add water to the pasta.
Oh, no.
And so he just stuck the pasta in there with the styrofoam and just turned it on for 3 minutes or whatever, and he burned the pasta for sure. Yeah, you're supposed to add water to it.
So going back to what you were saying about the what did you say, candy bar? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was like a chocolate bar.
Okay, so how I missed that part.
So you're just like, wait, okay, so he found out that there was obviously something around him that melted that candy bar in his pocket at a really fast rate. It wasn't his body heat that melted the chocolate. There was something in the environment. And then that's when they discovered that the microwaves actually excite the water molecules. And actually you shouldn't, obviously back in the day they didn't know, but you can't be inside a microwave and be exposed to, because we are made out of water ourselves, right? So
Right.
you
Now,
don't want to microwave yourself.
are you, because you have a background on the biological element and aspects that would be potentially beneficial for the body, that the body can
Yes.
extract the phytonutrients. Could those be damaged theoretically in a microwave?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to microwave yourself. There's
Well, no, not in the body, but like in your food, like.
microwave.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I use the microwave all the time. I don't think that there's anything. I would not disrecommend using a microwave. It just heats up your food. It's not. It's like heating up your food in a conventional oven. I don't feel like it does anything crazy to mutate your food.
Yeah. See.
In that way, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that can become carcinogenic. Like, for example, like grilling meat.
Right.
Burnt meat, for some reason, they have found some connection between that and cancer, because when you burn meat, you change the molecular structure of that protein, then you consume that protein, and it's, I don't know if it's specifically the protein. It might be like the fat or some other macronutrient that is getting that's getting changed.
And that could not be happening at all in a microwave.
I can't say definitively.
Right, and that's where I was like, for me, it was like, all right, well, better safe than sorry. So I just stopped using microwave.
Oh,
but
okay.
from my own personal experience, I felt way more energy, way longer throughout the day when I stopped. That's my own personal experience.
Okay.
I felt that like after I ate microwave food, I was like,
Well, you also have to think of what is usually microwavable food. It's full of preservatives and
no,
additives.
like healthy food.
Oh, like broccoli. And you microwaved it.
And there's also a theory about broccoli, even it's in and of itself not being it's not sprouted from any kind of seed. Technically, it's kind of man-made. I think like cauliflower and broccoli are both.
Broccoli comes from the mustard seed, right? It comes from the mustard plant.
It's an extension of it.
Yeah, so broccoli, we selectively bred certain plants to grow. And so from that, we have broccoli rye, cauliflower, I think maybe even kale. Don't quote me on that one. But there's a bunch of different vegetables that come from. So see, even though my education formally is molecular bio,
But that spans in everything. Molecules are everywhere.
But I'm really passionate about all sciences. I really loved physics when I was going through school. Even before college, in high school, I took physics. I love physics. I love math. I love pretty much all the sciences. Science is really like a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
And then I even, I volunteer at my kids' school sometimes, and we do a little science projects. So I like to think that I am decently well-rounded in a lot. That's why I know random things. And and also I have friends that are from different science disciplines. So whenever I'm wondering, and
you can engage in a deep conversation.
I can talk to them
Particle
about
physics, astrophysics.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who is a computational chemist, and he focuses on quantum mechanics. Now, he is like, you guys should interview that guy. No, he's amazing. He's on another level. But
the quantum realm, I would say, if there's anything that's a hobby of mine, it's quantum physics, astrophysics, particle physics.
A lot of people are really interested in that, but I think one of the challenges is math. If you don't, it's really heavy in the math and the physics calculus.
Formulaic. It's very formulaic, for sure.
Actually, linear algebra, you can you can really solve some really complex problems with linear algebra, and that's one thing that I kind of started dabbling in as well. Is I got MATLAB, which is a mathematical program for your computer, and also there's some courses out there that you can do for free, pretty much. Like MIT has open enrollment classes in online that you can do, and you can learn so many different topics: calculus, linear algebra.
I really liked Eugene Malov's work on like fusion, and he was one of the people, I think, don't quote me on this, but wrote some of the textbooks at MIT.
Oh.
Only thing was that he was like maybe so close that, you know, like on the conspiracy side,
conspiracy.
He got a little too close to the truth, and I don't know, who knows, but yeah,
that's the thing. So science, you have to be a skeptical individual. Question everything. You have to be skeptical, and then sometimes you do get to a point of like conspiracy and paranoia, and yeah. So then sometimes for my mental health, I have to kind of take a little step back and be like, okay, let's look at something else.
Yeah.
Like, let's think about another topic,
because it gets too far, and you have sometimes the science backs up the potential theory that most people don't know, and it's all theory based. But a lot of people aren't necessarily acknowledging it, or in the scientific community, you can get ostracized for branching off into a specific realm that conflicts with the current narrative.
Definitely.
And you're like, oh shit, should I voice my opinion about this, or should I just stay quiet?
Yes, that's a huge thing in science. Kind of like once the snowball effect happens, once the ball is rolling, if you try to go against something, you better know what you're talking about, and you better have data, you better have evidence, and you better have a thick skin. And also, funding is a very big deal.
And that's funding.
So if you want to,
you're messing with people's money at some point.
Yes, you're messing with your livelihood, because researchers, that's how they make their money. If they can't get grants, if they can't get money from, the government is the biggest funding source in science here in the States. So if you go against certain narratives, then you will be ostracized. You will not get your grant. And then how is your lab going to continue its research?
Yeah. So from your experience, is there a little bit of a gray area when there's like, have you been exposed to any kind of new cutting edge, maybe even bleeding edge discoveries yourself? Like in the field that you may or may not be able to talk about?
Well, when things haven't been published yet, you can't really talk about it. So I'm just going to say that.
It's kind of like an album that's about to drop.
Yeah.
The movie, like the Joker trailer with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. If things aren't ready for publication or aren't published yet, you kind of don't want to, spoiler alert.
Right.
And then it's also because then your competition knows where you're at.
Right.
And so that can beat you if you're like, I come from a small lab, and so some of the work that I was doing, we used to grow human skin in the lab. When I was doing immunology research, we would specifically isolate the T cells that reside in your skin, and we would grow those to not just figure out. We knew all the genes that were in the T cells because every cell in your body has the exact same DNA in there. However, the RNA, which then becomes the protein, the RNA profile varies from cell type to cell type. So that's what we were looking to isolate.
Ribonucleic acid.
Yes.
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
Yeah, deoxy.
You were like, I was like literally putting that out in the energy in the room. Somebody define RNA for the listeners, please, because I am one of those people that don't know what that means, doesn't know what that stands for. So thank you.
Yeah. So RNA looks and is very similar to DNA, except it's single-stranded, and it's really susceptible because it doesn't have a little buddy strand. It's really susceptible to degradation, which means it could just kind of get dissolved and die.
Like Thanos.
And it doesn't.
Attacked by Thanos.
It doesn't last too long. But some of the work with that, I can't really go too much into detail because there are labs that are way more funded and have a lot more resources available to them where they are able to do that type of work and look really into detail. But then once you do that, there's the wet lab aspect, but then there's the computational aspect of it too. You're going to do your sequencing, and then you have to do analysis. Like, okay, you have your sequence, but what does it mean? How do you quantify that?
Right.
So that's another reason why computers are the future, man, because that's
Well,
one
and
area.
AI also will be assisting.
Yeah, and so that's one of the areas that I've done bioinformatics work, which is pretty much the computer aspect of analyzing DNA and genetic information. But that's a really promising field as well right now. It's really good for anybody who's really interested in science or just computers. It's a good field to start looking into now.
Now, when we talked about something a while back, I think it was like in February, we talked about, you said something about did you break down the human genome, or what was that about?
No, I did not. So back in 2003 was when the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, sequenced the entire human genome. So our technology since then has skyrocketed since then. It's been 16 years. There was also a private company who kind of beat them to the punch. There's two different types of sequencing technologies at the time. But the good thing about the government, the NIH, is that once their results are done in public, they're public. So they're available for every and all institutions. Like I use NIH all the time, the NIH website, NCBI. So that was awesome, and it took about over 10 years to sequence the entire human genome. But then, okay, it's sequenced. We know like the order and all the chromosomes from 1 to 23 in the pairs. But then there's like, okay, it's sequenced, that's cool. But what does it mean?
Right.
What is a code?
Yeah.
So since
We are code.
Yeah, so since then, a lot of work has been done to see, okay, what is in each chromosome? What is it code for? And it's crazy because a lot of our DNA, we don't know what it codes for. It does not code for protein. So the central dogma of biology is DNA turns into RNA, which turns into protein. The protein does a function every cell needs. Cool, that's awesome. However, there's a lot in the genome that are not genes, that are not coding for protein. They code for a lot of other things. And also, if you understand a little bit of chemistry and what your DNA is made out of, nucleic acids, just how they are floating around, depending if they're condensed or if they're not condensed, it could change the way that they are the way that the entire DNA molecule structure is folded.
Right.
And depending on that, it could prevent or cause proteins to be expressed more or less. And so, yeah, we're still learning. We're still learning about what our human genome, what it all codes for.
Well, that's like incredible. And we went so far, and now, like you were saying, our technology has risen exponentially since then.
Yeah.
I mean, Moore's law doesn't even apply. It's out the window at the rate at which transistors on a processor are doubled every 18 months.
Yeah.
Not a true fact anymore. It's not even a law anymore. It's like we're going so fast. And now, even in the quantum computing realm,
Yeah.
the calculation possibility is so scalable that it's absurd,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, but with that being aside, are we truly leveraging the full potential of our technological prowess mixed with, like I was saying earlier, the bleeding edge of what we've discovered scientifically? And if that's the case, are we actually able to submit the results as opposed to not submitting those results for protection of said funding sources, or like making sure that we still keep the status quo because it may completely reject everything that was learned before?
So right now, I know one of the bottlenecks, one of the funnels of science is we have so much data. Like
Right.
we have been able to generate so much data. It's awesome. However, the amount of people on this planet that know and understand
How to
and can
process the
that data
data.
is limited.
Right.
So that's another reason why I'm really like passionate about science, and I want as many people as I can to also be interested in science. There's so many different areas of science, but pretty much that is a big bottleneck because there are not a lot of people that can take that data and do something with it.
Right.
They can take that data, analyze it, manipulate it, and get something out of it. Because you just
We
have
don't want
a
to
ton of-
manipulate the data.
well, not manipulate the data, but analyze it
Right.
in a way that it tells a story.
Right.
And then you need somebody that can tell that story and communicate that in
Right.
non-science jargon, right?
Right.
That's another huge disconnect.
Right.
Is in the
If
science
you
community.
can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it well enough yourself.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal in the scientific community. Communication is a huge deal because you could have just discovered an amazing drug or a molecule or an amazing you could do so many amazing things, but if you can't communicate that to the general public,
Right.
or to potential funding sources, then it means nothing. And so that's another area where I feel like we have that big bottleneck, because the people that are scientists, the way that they think and communicate is sometimes it doesn't translate
and
to
it doesn't-
regular,
right. And it's
to
like
regular.
the very
different.
intellectual, very head forward, progressive thinkers, but not necessarily personable. Which is why the emergence of someone like a Neil deGrasse Tyson or a Bill Nye the Science Guy, they're regarded as like the apex of what is translatable, or the apex of what is deliverable to the human species,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like, we come down and we deliver these messages from upon high, which everyone really has access to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff is in the public domain. If they knew what was in the public domain, it would blow their minds. It would change their life. They have no idea how much data is available.
Yes.
But what I've also realized is the ancient knowledge too, and relatively ancient, like, but not necessarily located out of here, like stuff that Russian scientists from the 30s or like even the 70s were discovering that we're kind of catching up to now, or it's being released that we're catching up to it now.
Yeah.
Like kind of the whole transference of genetic material, alluding to some sort of not noosphere, because that's like Daniel Pinchbeck referred to that as the sphere of human consciousness, but like, or human thought, but like a web or like an ethereal information blob, I guess, so to speak, that holds genetic material, but that can't necessarily be seen. Like the experiment that they did with I think it was the tadpoles and the salamanders, where they took like 2 petri dishes, right, and they took a laser through like one of the petri dishes and of the tadpoles, and that laser then the light itself transferred the genetic material from the tadpoles into the salamanders. And so it turned the salamanders into tadpoles, or vice versa. I don't know if it was frogs into salamanders, or salamanders into frogs, but the genetic material transferred. And so what that says is so many things you can extrapolate from that. You can deduce that DNA is an optically based genetic transfer mechanism. It could be theoretically.
Or you could say that laser somehow, that either the laser, the light, the frequency, whatever, something affected the environment that the organisms were in, and it caused what's called eugenics.
Right.
So even though it didn't necessarily have to transfer the genetic information, but what it did, it could have turned on and it could have triggered to turn on and turn off certain genes
that it already possessed within.
Yes, that already had
and that opens up a whole new wormhole. Is how much do we have within?
Eugenics is a huge field as well, because when you are like, for example, BPA. You guys always...
Eugenics is kind of a scary buzzword, too, because that's like what the Nazis were practicing.
Here's the thing with eugenics. It's pretty much like if you're exposed to certain things, it could cause your body to turn on and turn off certain genes. Right. Now you see, like, everything's got to be BPA free, and some of the research that they did with BPA, it's a molecule, biphenyl alpha. It's pretty much, they found that mice
plastic.
but mice that were exposed to this or it was in their food, their babies would get really fat. Really, really fat, and they would have obesity. And then those babies would be fat. And I mean, here in the States, we have this obesity epidemic. And so they're like, okay, no more BPA. It's bad. But what they're using other polymers that are isomers that are not BPA, but molecularly, they are very similar.
Right.
So you think your body's going to be like, oh, no, that's not BPA. That's whatever, So we're constantly exposed and bombarded to different chemicals all day, every day.
Right.
And we don't know. There hasn't been long enough studies to know exactly what all these chemicals are doing. And then when you combine them, you could test one, but we're exposed to so many of them at different levels all the time.
Yeah. We need like peer-reviewed case studies spanning 10 years, but within narrowed down within a year. But yeah.
5 hours.
Yeah, 5 hour. Yeah, 5 hour case study.
The science process is rigorous and time consuming and lengthy, and you can't. There's not like shortcuts and stuff. There's a lot of rigor, and you need to be
rigmarole. That's probably where the term comes from. That's freaking rigmarole.
You have to have that mindset of like, okay, this is going to take me a long time, and I'm going to be working on this for many years, and you might reach some dead ends. And I think that's another thing that turns people off from science is because we are in a time and in a society where we love that instant gratification. We want that right now. We need that hot pocket in 2 minutes. We're not going to sit there and wait for a roast to cook in the oven for hours, right? We want everything now.
Yeah.
And we have the technology to get so many things right now.
Yeah.
But the scientific process is not always right now. It's like trial and error and all the time. And
could you imagine waiting for a dinner 10 years from now?
Oh my God,
Imagine.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because in a lot of the Eastern traditions, like in India, for example, it's not a big deal for you to wait like an hour before you get your food. Like a waiter will just come around when they come around because over there, time isn't necessarily viewed as linear. Like it's viewed as circular. Like it all comes back around again.
Yeah.
You're breathing in one moment you aren't, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, and it's very simple,
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, so just maybe all we need is a paradigm shift in the way that we see things.
Oh yeah, but you know how that doesn't happen.
It's not going to happen until you say, hey, like the answer to stop you from aging is science.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can build up the telomeres in your body, to stop you from aging, and metal atoms become diatoms, and you can use monoatomic elements, And,
So for you guys that didn't catch what telomeres are, they are.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
going a little sciencey.
So in your cells, you have DNA, right? But and if any of you have seen pictures of like cartoon renderings of what chromosomes look like, they look like little X's or whatever, right? However, DNA could never really be quote unquote naked. They need to have like these little caps at the end of those X's to prevent things like DNA or certain proteins to kind of degrade that DNA, eat it away. So there's these little caps that are on the DNA that are called telomeres. Depending on the length of the telomeres, can pretty much tell the cell how old it is.
Oh wow!
Yes, and so they've been doing studies on specifically these special types of proteins, telomeres, and how those are affected, what affects them.
Consuming baby blood. That's what they've been doing.
Oh my God, it's incredible what we do know about the cell, but it's also incredible how much we do not know about the cell. Like you could take the most simplest cell in your body, which is plasma, which is made out of more than 97% water. It's mostly water and some protein and pretty much that, water and protein. But you can take it apart and know what's in it, but can you put it back together and make something? No. Like we're not there yet, It's just
so we could create life at that point.
Yeah, we would be able to, but we still are not at that point yet in our technology where we can create something from nothing. We can take inorganic molecules and make them into a living thing. We're not there yet.
So what I found really interesting when talking with you before was how how much science you know, how much you love science, and then, I'm going to be the guy that brings it to this level, but believing in God.
Oh, yeah.
I found that very, very interesting because you don't necessarily find that a lot in people that have like that religious background or like the religious like view. It's religion is what it is. This is how we are here. This is what it is. So you have like both aspects in your brain where it's just like I love science, but I also love like this whole other realm of religion and stuff like that. So
Wait, is it religion or is it just some sort of higher
Like
spirituality?
Spirituality,
Yeah.
Because there's a huge difference.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is a huge difference. There's spirituality, there's religion, there is philosophy, there is mindfulness, there is so much out there, right? As a scientist, I feel like a lot of people think that it's either one or the other. Like if you're a scientist, you can't believe in something that is not quantifiable, not measurable. If we don't have the technology or a way to detect or measure it or get some kind of data out of it, then it's not science, it's pseudoscience, and it's, blasphemy, right? But what I personally have encountered, it's that I feel like it's not either or. Like you can still be a spiritual person and believe in things that are technically not, we as humans are right now in 2019 with our tech, we can't detect or measure or understand or explain. But that's also because I know as a scientist that there's so much we don't know.
Right.
There's so much we do know. I'm really thankful and excited and happy for what we do know. But there is so much we don't know and we don't understand. If you ever speak with a theoretical physicist, for example, the way that they think, the things that they say almost sound crazy. Like we were talking about the concept of time earlier, how we think time is linear. Mm-hmm. Time is actually a man-made construct. Right. We see event after event after event after event, and it goes in a linear way. You cannot go back. You can't go back in time. Theoretically, right? You can't go back in time. You can only go forward. Right. But time is relative in the sense that in this Earth right now, and in planet Earth, in this part of the galaxy, time is we view it this way. However, when you are traveling close to a black hole, time actually changes.
Right, there's a time dilation.
We have the space-time fabric, right, that Einstein talked about.
It's again theoretically.
Yes.
Have you actually gone towards the black hole?
Well, you know what? No, they said that they just took a picture of the black hole. We finally were able to detect and find a black hole. So that's exciting. But like I said, there's a lot of things we don't know. And yes, I do believe in God. If I'd have to choose a quote unquote label as to religion, I am Christian. I do believe in God and I believe in Jesus. And then I have had
Does it stop there, though?
Scientific friends. What?
Sorry to interrupt you, but does it stop there where you're like, yes, God is a good thing. Jesus is, Christ's consciousness or whatever it is.
Yes.
His message is the good thing. But then does it stop there for you? Or do you actually believe all the stories in the Bible and all that stuff? Like as a scientist.
Right.
We have to ask.
Right.
We have to know.
No, that really is a great question. That is a really good question because as a Christian, this is a point where you have to kind of like, okay, this is like, do you believe in the Bible? Yes or no? Gun to your head. Right. Do you believe in the Bible? Yeah. Yes or no? Yes, I believe in the Bible.
Okay. As a collection of metaphorical stories or as a literal transcript or whatever? This is the part that is a little bit tough for me to explain, but when Jesus was on earth, all his stories were parables. He wasn't just like,
so Simon in this village, 30 years ago was talking to blah, blah, blah. He said everything in parables. They were all stories that were not specific to like this person. He could have, Son of God, he could specifically say these stories, time, place, everything. But he always spoke in metaphors. And I think it's because as a humanity, those are stories that will transcend time. Like the lessons in those stories, it doesn't matter if they were 2,000 years ago or in 2019. They're applicable.
Or 2,000 years before that, which is also theorized that
Yes.
the story of Horus essentially is Jesus before Jesus. Mm-hmm. But in the Egyptian times.
Yeah, so-
in the Sumerians, it goes farther back and farther back. It just keeps repeating itself.
And another thing about me, because I am a scientist, I am interested in other religions too, and other people's point of view, and kind of looking at collectively what we have in common and why are we telling the same stories over and over again. And
like Eddie Griffin, how he's like, somebody say Muhammad is the messenger, somebody say Jesus is the messenger. Fuck the messenger. Did you get the message?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So I like his perspective on that.
There we go. That's another thing. I've had friends who are scientists who are really big into philosophy and really big into other spirituality, and some who are hardcore like agnostic or atheist.
Yeah.
And I appreciate having all these people in my life because we are able to have, good discussions.
You don't always want to have people that agree with you.
Yeah, no. You don't always want to be around people that see exactly your point of view. You want to also, and I think it's strength. Yeah, but it strengthens you because then you really have to pick a side. Like you really have to be like, no, what do I believe in? Or you're also opening yourself up to like, okay, well, present me a good evidence, a good argument, and then let's have a conversation. And that's actually what I really enjoy when you can have an open conversation or have a friendship with people that are not of the same view as you, but you can still respect what they have to say and understand where they're coming from. I have friends that are from all over the world. Like it was really a shame when 9/11 happened because growing up, my neighbors were Muslim. They were Egyptian. Some of my closest friends in school were Muslim as well. And 9/11 happened, and it was like this witch hunt for Muslims.
Yeah.
And
I actually, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's
I
fine.
actually didn't even know that was a religion until 9/11 happened.
Wow. Yeah, see? No, but then it became like they're terrible and then they just want to blow everything. I was like, excuse me? Like, I've been to their house. I've had dinner with them. Like, they are the nicest people. What are you talking about? But it's when you go to the extremes of religions, right? Like, when you think Christian, you think the super extremist.
I mean, look at the Spanish Inquisition. It's like as bad as Christianity.
Yeah, West Baptist Church in, was that Idaho or Iowa or something like that, where they're like, just like crazy, like, God hates homosexuals and God hates the military, and they go to the funerals of the soldiers, and they're just just hatred, and just like wait a second.
Jesus saved love.
Yeah, I'm like, where
in the Bible does it say that?
The miscommunication and the misunderstanding of what the hell? Like, what are you reading? Are you reading like a Scientology book, but then calling yourself Christian? Like,
it's
like, what?
I think that the reason that I gravitate towards Christianity, it's because it just, above all, love. Just love each other.
So love essentially would be your religion.
Yeah.
Do you feel that Christianity specifically, or like the Bible, and not even the Bible, but the whole aura surrounding that keeps you closer to your family? Maybe like the people that
actually don't have. I'm not really like my biological family. I'm not really super close to them.
Did you go to church when you were growing up?
Growing
Do you have
up, but
fond
it was
memories of like youth or?
So I grew up. It's funny because the way that I grew up and like it was very religious and a very religious aspect, and it wasn't about having a relationship or spirituality or asking questions. It was really legalistic and really like you have to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, be a certain way. There was no freedom, no nothing. And it was horrible. Like I did not enjoy it at all, right? And I know that is what is very off-putting, and a lot of people are like, that there's so many rules, and if that's what it is, then I don't want anything to do with that. But as I got older and experienced life and being in the military,
You found that the morals were sound?
and I found that, like, I'm like, there's got to be something to this, and I felt like this cosmos is too big, and this is an argument that a lot of people are like, oh, well, there's an explanation. There's, however, 3.8 billion years of evolution and all of this. But I feel like our universe is about, what, like 15 billion years old. I just have a hard time believing that just by coincidence we were at the right place, the right time, and
in the Goldilocks zone.
in this perfect little era, in this perfect little place in the cosmos where we have Earth and we have life, and just the way that everything is, it's like a design. Like I that's how I see it, because the way that our solar system, even our solar system, is set up, we are protected by so many, like, we have the iron core in our Earth that protects us from crazy UV radiation, crazy levels of solar blasts, and the reason we don't get bombarded by a ton of space debris is
amazing atmosphere.
Yeah, well, we have our atmosphere. We have like Jupiter sucks up a lot of stuff, so we don't get it. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like it's our.
Now, what about flat earthers?
Oh God! Don't make me talk about
make you talk
flat
about that.
earthers.
Just take like a minute and like talk to the flat earthers out there.
Okay.
Because I get in arguments all the time with these guys.
Okay, so I don't argue.
I do. I'm not afraid to argue at all. And it usually devolves into ad hominem attacks, where I'm like, all right.
No, but here, the thing that I've heard, because I didn't understand the whole flat earther thing. I thought, no, to be honest, I was like, this is a joke, right? Like, they're really, it's 2019, people think the earth is flat. Yeah. But I'm like, why would they think the earth is flat? Like, haven't they seen pictures? Like NASA, we have satellites.
That's not enough.
No,
they're photoshopped.
They're photoshopped,
apparently.
And the moon landing never happened. And I'm just very like, okay, so the NASA is not a credible source for you, then what is a credible source for you? Like, what is it going to take for you? Why? So they think that it's like Earth is flat, and then there's like a dome.
Firmament or something. Or...
Yeah, no, but then there's a dome over the Earth, right? To explain for our atmosphere, because they believe that we have an atmosphere.
And there's an infinite ice wall, apparently.
So, is it? I don't know.
But it's just like, there has to be, if there's a flat Earth, is there an end to it, or is
that's what I was saying. They're saying that's like an infinite ice wall that just. Well, some of them theorize that it just goes on forever, and it's a simulation.
I thought it was like a.
That's a long plane through a whole wide world of space.
World? No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no, not world, but like just like if you're thinking space, like outer space, it's like. Wait.
And then I'm just like,
there is no space to a lot of flat earthers.
So like,
space is fake.
No. But then I'm also thinking, I'm like, okay, I have flown from California to Europe to Kyrgyzstan to Iraq. That was for the Iraq deployment, and then Afghanistan. I flew from Afghanistan to like Russia to. Alaska,
so apparently
and then
you're just going from here to there.
No,
to
but
there,
I have completely gone around the Earth, right? I've gone all the way around, and I'm like, okay, so how do you go around the Earth then? And they're like, it's all conspiracy, and how like the airlines are in it, and how they fool everyone to think. I'm like, but time zones, like, it's like day and time, and like this. I really. You know what? I haven't really spoken with a flat earther before. Personally.
They have it broken down scientifically.
I know. I actually kind of want to talk to them and be like, okay, can you break this down for me? Because I really don't. So I can't really address them because I don't know what their argument really is. I'm not informed in their side. So until I come talk to a flat earther, then I don't know. But I just feel like I know friends that have friends that are flat earthers. They're like, you should talk to so and so, and I'm just like, okay, well, are they going to listen to me if I have something to rebuttal?
It
And
feels
they're
like they're finally part of something. That's what it seems like to me, that the community is gathering. Because if you look, there's like a YouTube video about like flat earthers gathering together, and every one of them, they were all expressing themselves in different ways. Like one of them was rapping like crazy, but like you could tell that he may have wanted to be a rapper at one point, but didn't quite get there. But now he's at a flat Earth conference, and people are listening now. And then this other guy was at, it was a conference. Yeah. And it was like, but they all seemed to me, they all seem to be of a specific personality type.
Oh, got it.
And I don't want to say like rejected, but either they've rejected the status quo of society, or they've been rejected by a number of people within society, and they kind of gravitate towards each other, and then are now finally part of some sort of conspiracy that this Japanese satellite that circulates the globe doesn't exist.
Now we're talking about Earth, and I don't know too much about the planets. I wasn't really like a science person per se.
Geography was not your forte?
No. It's not that. It's I was thinking about how bad we want to find out if we can
inhabit another planet,
and it being Mars. And I thought about it like, what if we were on Mars a long time ago, and then we sought out for a new place because we polluted the shit out of Mars? And now we're on Earth here.
Yeah, that's possible.
Because we're not very far from Mars,
well, that's actually a going theory. That's a legitimate going theory, that there were nuclear explosions on Mars which created the hazardous atmosphere that you currently experience when looking into a telescope, and like all the windstorms, because theoretically Mars could be in the habitable zone, but something happened to its atmosphere when we don't necessarily know what that is. Could it be us?
Now,
because we ruin and destroy everything.
Total mind blow. We come here and there's like dinosaurs and shit, and we're like, whoa, what the fuck are these things? And like we're like just these little itty bitty things to these ginormous things, and it's just like, so then how, like,
and our atmosphere was actually different. In the time of the dinosaurs, our atmosphere was not what we know of it today.
Yeah, I was just telling Josh about ice cores. Another buddy.
We had a higher level of oxygen. So right now, our atmosphere we're breathing in, you think it's mostly oxygen. It's not. It's mostly nitrogen, and with some oxygen and some other gases floating around. But in the time of the dinosaurs and the supergiant trees and all of that, there was more oxygen. So the more oxygen you have,
ants were huge.
Yeah, ants, spiders, bugs, because bugs kind of breathe in through their skin.
Interesting.
So it allows them to grow really, really big when there's a lot of oxygen in the environment or in the atmosphere. But then it changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about the? Do you know about like the giant squid and the giant octopus and like how we've never seen them, and then
or they've washed up to shore and stuff, like dead ones.
The big shark. What do they call that?
The great white. Megalodon.
Yeah.
Whatever. That
like, do you believe in that shit?
I watched Shark Week. I watched Shark Week.
I really want to see one. I mean, I hate sharks. Don't get me wrong. I'm like terrified of sharks. Like if I had to go with Will Smith, and when he did like that shark diving, I would probably have fucking had a heart attack. I'm not gonna lie.
That's hilarious.
That's funny.
But I want to do it. Like I want to face that fear. But I'm just like, oh god, shit and piss my pants while I'm doing it.
I see it as just like a creature. It's just a creature that wants to
like the
eat.
Megalodon is like they're supposed to say that it's like
humongous.
But that's terrifying.
Just you know how like I was saying, there's so much we don't know.
Right.
The ocean is full of things we don't know. We don't.
Still less explored than space.
Yeah, like the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, the pressures down there are so severe. It's like, how can anything live down there?
Yeah.
But there's life down there. Yeah. Like it's insane. And then, can you imagine the stuff that can survive that pressure? How would it react if it would come up to shore?
Probably the opposite of how we react to it.
Yeah.
Well, and then like. What?
Is that why they wash up the shore? Maybe.
What are your thoughts on transpermia?
Is that the thought that we came from a comet that
not necessarily just us, or but that life here was seeded from elsewhere, and that's
nucleic acids and proteins and kind of like some
The building blocks of life,
some
essentially.
early type cell types came from outer space, and then that they landed on Earth, and then Earth somehow was conducive to it continuing to survive and divide and multiply
And could still be going on, theoretically, considering the fact that we're constantly getting stellar dust from space. We're constantly getting, there's
all the water on
stuff
this
that breaches
planet,
the atmosphere.
all the water on planet Earth came from space and bombarded the Earth.
Right, which accounts
Yeah.
for the extraordinarily wide variety of life we have here on Earth.
Yes, it's see, there's all these theories, right? All these theories.
That's great.
Because
That's a lot
if
of
you look at a
theories.
spider, right, and you look at a squirrel, right,
Yeah.
and you put them like a big ass freaking spider, you know what I mean, and then you put put a squirrel in there, and then you put a squid in there, and then you put a mouse or like a snake,
Yeah.
right, and you put them all in a box and you just observe them, right, and it's like
Who comes out the champion?
Well, none of those creatures operate in the same way at all. Like
yeah.
they're completely, but they are all breathing nitrogen, mainly nitrogen, oxygen, right? And they're all
Yeah, and they're all made out of cells, and
Yeah, they're
all
all
those
carbon-based.
cells, yes, all those cells have DNA, RNA, and the processes of how those cells split and divide is universal through all
Right,
of them.
right.
Yeah, that's why I gravitate towards molecular because it's like the building
least
blocks.
common denominator.
Yeah, it's like the most basic, fundamental form that makes everything that's living, and all types of anything that's alive. There's this argument that viruses aren't technically not alive because they don't have DNA, they have RNA, and that's their method, and they need a vector, they need a host to survive. They cannot survive on their own. But pretty much everything that moves and walks and that is considered living has DNA, RNA, and protein, and that's why I never get bored of it.
So learning, trying to find the ultimate answer of the basic, most singular point of origin of what we call this, right? It's kind of
it's like the Big Bang of biology.
Biology, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
See that's for me. That journey took me into would it be astrophysics? I don't know.
No,
physics. I think
so. It is
quantum physics. I think is what it took me into.
It is an area of science where there's theories as to how you take molecules that are regular inorganic molecules that become organic molecules, and then they start to aggregate and come together in a certain way that creates like a pseudocell, and then somehow decides to start dividing and multiplying. But yeah, that is an area of science, and people are trying to recreate that in the lab all the time of like basic elements. What would have been on the Earth, and what were the environments 3.8 billion years ago? What elements were around, and how they could have, if you apply energy to it, and if you do certain things to manipulate it, how it
reacts.
and how it could potentially create life. So yeah, there are scientists that's what they research all the time.
That's why I like the E8 quasicrystals so much.
The quasicrystals?
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about it, but like on the cutting edge of quantum physics, so essentially like a checkerboard, for example, is a crystal, right?
Yeah.
It's in a living state, but you can have, they take, because we go through dimensions, right? We're occupying 3 dimensions of space and then
time.
1 dimension of time, which would theoretically be the 4th dimension, right? We're that's already established. But then beyond that, there's the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension. There's newer dimensions that we are aware of. We just because there's lower dimensions, like singular, like a line, like the flatlanders or whatever it is, like the lines, right? We know that there are lower dimensions, so as above, so below. So therefore, we can deduce that there are higher dimensions. Yeah. And so what they've essentially done, just in layman's terms, is they've projected an 8th dimensional object down, but they've projected a shadow of an 8th dimensional object. And so that creates a shadow on the ground, right? And to create the quasicrystal, what they've done is they've taken that 8th dimensional shape, that is now flat because it's into
A shadow.
a shadow. So it's a 2D space, and they've created a 3D representation of the eighth dimensional object.
Wow.
And they create this sacred geometrical, spherical, but within the sphere, there's all kinds of like tetrahedrons and multiple different patterns.
Yeah.
And the point that's emerged from that is that they've discovered, just to kind of wrap it up very quickly, on the very most finite point of that eighth dimensional object, there's a singular tetrahedron in the middle, which theoretically could be what is alluding to the binding of all that is. So it's, I guess, a new, and they call it this, a new theory of everything, where that small tetrahedron is the atom, or is the pixel of our dimension or our reality. And so everything is like points down to that singular pixel, which is a tetrahedron, but it's a three-dimensional pixel that everything spans off from
that
there.
represents an eighth
So it's like a
dimensional.
exactly, and so it's like okay, beyond string theory, I guess beyond with the Higgs boson discovery, you know, that they've taken the expansion. They're working on a new
super collider,
working on a new one,
faster super collider.
CERN, I think it's CERN too that's doing
Yeah.
that. But man, in Geneva, Switzerland, there's an atom smasher essentially with it spans like 17 miles in diameter or something like that. And essentially, they're just smashing particles together to recreate the Big Bang.
Yeah,
You're familiar with the whole. I'm sure the listeners are already familiar at this point with that, but
I'm not too familiar with it. I think I've seen it on something like going through like YouTube, and like one channel, one video turns into another video that and you just kind of like go from video to video. And I think I've seen that
Big
before.
Bang. Big Bang talks about that a couple of times. They talk about it.
But it's huge. The undertaking that we've done. So the levels to which we're willing to go as a species to learn what happened, like what our origins are so vast that
Exactly. That is a common denominator, space and time. But everybody wants to, like, there's always stories and of like, where did we come from? Like, we're always searching for
the
more.
why.
Yeah.
the funny thing is, like, for me, the most answers that I've kind of gotten were from long ago, like from like Mayans, because I guess they recorded time. Time was their thing. That was the whole civilization was based on it.
And it ended in 2012. This
Yeah.
is all a dream, guys.
Now
This isn't even real.
We're just floating. We're in the fifth dimension already.
Yeah,
We just have to catch up to ourselves.
Yeah.
But so like the Mayans, the Sumerians, like ancient astrology, numerology, psychology, all that. That's where I found my answers as far as like what's really kind of going on. And I've been able to test it using the scientific method in the environment, what everybody is, who I'm interacting with, how I'm interacting with them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you found any kind of solace in combining your, religious aspect, not religious, but spiritual aspect and your scientific discoveries.
Yeah. I do it all the time.
Right,
I
like-
do it all the time. It's something that I'm like, interesting. Like, I'll take little bits and pieces, and I'm like, wow. And I just see a lot of, beauty, actually. Like, it's certain things, like, because this world sometimes can get really depressing, and how, like, horrible we are as human beings to each other, how horrible we are to the environment, how horrible we are to everything. But then there's moments where I see certain things, even scientifically, how, like in a cell, how things move and operate like in a symphony, and it has to be like beautiful, and just the way that I see it, it's like art and music.
It unfolds as it's supposed to.
Like just there's a certain, it's like an orchestra, and every key has to be hit the right time and the right place, and like there's this song, and if it's not played correctly, then it gets all jacked up. So I feel like there's like definitely a spiritual and an artistic side to me that helps also with the science, because it's the innovators.
That's rare, that fusion too, mentally.
No, because it's the innovators, the thinkers, the artists, all those people that do think differently, that can tap into that part of their brain, that are the inventors. There are the ones that are asking weird questions that are like, oh, I never thought about that, or I never saw it that way.
Right.
Even talking to my kids, some of the questions that they ask, I'm like, oh, like, I'm sure one day I had that question, but an adult gave me the "don't worry about it," or
Right,
like
yeah.
I'll explain it to you later, and then you just totally forgot about it.
That was my pet peeve when I was
Oh,
little.
God,
like I would ask why, and it was because I said so,
Yeah.
or just stop asking. But
Yes.
that's why I do my best to go all the way with the whys.
Yes,
I'll go all the way.
I'm the same
Like-
way. When my kids ask me questions, I try to break it down in terminologies and words that they understand, and kind of break it down to their their level, because they can only comprehend so much. But kids understand more than you think. But
Right.
Especially now, though.
yes,
They're connected with a
and
neural
yeah,
net.
yeah, and the technology, and just like how they pick up things so quickly. And I'm like, wow, I feel like kids nowadays have the potential to be smarter than we were growing up.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
Oh, big
Stuff that my 6-year-old
Can do.
is doing
Yeah.
is what I didn't even start to do
Yeah.
until I was 12, 13.
Yeah.
Not like, started getting into girls and that kind of, not
Yeah.
like that, but just sitting around the
Technology.
house, playing video games. Like he's full on like playing a fighting game, but using like hyper haptic, like a hyperly haptic technologically advanced controller.
Yeah.
He's just like pressing and being fully cognizant and aware
Yeah.
of what he's doing. I was 8 when the first Nintendo came out.
You
You know,
only had 2 buttons.
yeah, dude, like it's crazy, and
Yeah.
they're
2
already.
buttons in a
He's on the computer, the
Yeah.
tablet, flipping it back and forth. And it's like, dude, this is nuts. Like,
Yeah.
even with my 2-year-old and her like doing like the shape games and like holding on to it and like
Maneuvering it.
into the hole, and then like putting the one shape into the other shape, and then like when it pops up, like, oh, like this is your score, like you did it in this time, like she knows what button to push to go to the next game.
right.
And I'm just like, wait a second, like, I didn't show you that.
Yeah.
You just kind of did it on your own.
Yeah, it's the
and maybe
whole
my
trial
wife
and
showed her how to do it too, but like
Still, the
just
fact that she remembered it.
remembers
Yes.
to hit that precise
Yes.
button to get to the next game, so that she can play another shape game and
And we were like playing with like dirt
Yeah.
and rocks and twigs and
Yeah,
stuff.
oh, yeah.
And
I was digging holes.
Yeah.
I was out in my back of my grandparents' house digging holes, playing with fire at my house.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I was just like, I was so interested in like how things worked and why we like do things, and like especially fire. Fire was like, I don't know why or what it is about fire.
Oh yeah, me too. I used to be a
That-
little pyro myself.
Yeah.
Pyros, little pyros.
You just accidentally set your house on fire because you're just like messing with fire. I don't know what it is about fire that I'm just like.
Well, yeah, like at that age, you're kind of just, we're kind of just working with our dexterity. We're trying to be more malleable, or manipulate our environment a little bit more. But they're already like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Oh, you do that.
yeah,
YouTube. Yeah. Okay. What's this? I'm interested in this. And then they just go deep into it.
Yeah, and there's so much access to so much. Like, for example, when my 6-year-old asks me a question, I was like, you know what, babe, that is a really good question. I don't know right now. And she goes, ask Google, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think Google knows that. And she's like, no, Google knows. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's a Googleable question.
Yeah, Googleable.
Or Alexa. Like,
Yeah.
she'll be like, Alexa.
She's like, well, does Siri know then?
I know. She's just like,
Who are all these women? Who are
Oh,
these
right?
women or these entities that are telling you all this information?
Right.
I don't know why do we call them? Why do we have them as like base it as like a woman's name? Like Siri is a woman. Why don't we just like?
Well,
I don't even know why I did it.
the
I don't even know
Samsung
why
one is
I
like
did it.
Jeeves or something, or some
oh
sort
yeah,
of butler name.
I mean, you can change their voice. 'cause
I know you
some-
can,
some
but I don't know why.
people
I just jumped to it, like considering it to be a woman.
That's a systemic issue.
Oh my goodness!
And
here.
I didn't
We're
even
dealing
mean
with
to.
it. Like,
I didn't even
like,
mean to. I was just.
women service. You know what I mean? It's like
guess.
that's the dogma.
I was
or the
thinking more
stigma.
like women, keeper of knowledge, but okay.
Hey,
you want to do that?
that's
there
dope
we
too.
go.
I like
there we
that
go.
dope too.
It could be.
So are spiders,
What?
essentially.
Spiders?
According to the ancients, yeah, spiders are keepers of knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Their webs are.
Is that why the black widow kills all of the
Yeah.
males?
Yeah.
It eats the male after.
Yeah.
You know, every spider
Thank
web
you
is
for
like
this.
a thumb. It's like a fingerprint. No two spider webs
Those
are
are
the
alike,
same.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Yeah.
did
And
not
did you know that spiders actually eat their webs once they're like all old and like not
No, because
usable
I didn't know
anymore?
that.
They eat them and they
Whatever
reuse it.
sharkophobic I am
A spider
arachnophobic.
Oh, okay. So you don't like spiders
Arachnophobia.
either. Okay, cool.
I hate spiders.
Okay, you hate spiders. You hate sharks.
That's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, dude. Like, so, like, we're at the point though where technology is gonna. I don't know. We're at a new precipice where technology and biology is merging too.
Oh, yeah.
We have cyborgs now. Essentially, we have people. They're volunteering. They're completely healthy people, but they're volunteering to integrate technology into their arms or into their
Oh yeah.
cortex.
I actually was really, for a while there, I was really thinking about getting into like I wouldn't call it prosthesis, but pretty much like that area of fusing biocompatible material to human tissue. For example, like people that have lost limbs and stuff, to make, like a robotic arm, but also to make it in a way that is biocompatible and you can integrate your own nerves and your own tissue and kind of like blend the tech into the person, like have
and control
robot, where you can control it with your neuro electrical pathway. That is part of the future too. I think that's super interesting. That was actually something that before I decided to go into CRISPR and to do like genetic editing as my area of focus, that was another area because I've always been really interested in like bioengineering. There's so many different aspects of bioengineering.
Right.
I'm gonna do like the molecular level, but yeah, you could even do that at the like organismal level and see if you can find something that you can find compatible with human tissue that your body's not going to reject and push out, and you can use your nerve signals to control it.
Yeah,
they are working on that.
It's happening. Yeah, there's successful operations.
So before you did all of this science and wanting to be a scientist and whatnot, you did the military. So what made you go from high school to being in the military, or did you not go from high school to being in the military?
I did go from high school into being in the military. I actually have always had a passion for science. And I was doing like a CNA program to be a certified nursing assistant in high school because I actually finished high school early. I was like 16. I was one of those kind of brainy kids. And so I was like, well, I got some time to kill before I start college because I was going to go to college. I had a full ride and everything. And while I went to two different high schools. My first high school was Adams City High School in Commerce City, Colorado. I'm originally from Colorado. And they had a Marine Corps ROTC program.
Do you feel the oxygen's better in Colorado because there's more trees?
It's actually thinner.
Is it thinner?
Yes, it's thinner because
altitude.
Because the altitude, yes. But I did a lot of training up there, running and everything. So when I went to boot camp in South Carolina, when I ran, I was like, oh, there's so much more oxygen here. I can run even faster. But yeah, so I was going to go to college, but my family life and my home life was very toxic, and I come from a very low socioeconomic background. And so I knew that if I were to stay back home, that I probably would end up dropping out of college because I had to provide for my family and worry about bills and rent and everything. And so while I was in my first high school, I learned about ROTC and I learned about the Marine Corps, and I was like, this is awesome, they're badass, but I want to go to college. Then my brother, who's a year older than me, he was in a grade ahead of me, he actually ended up joining the Marine Corps first, and he was like, dude, you could totally do this. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, no, you got that brain. Like, you have that mental fortitude that you'd be able to handle this.
So you clearly have the aptitude
and then
for what it takes.
Yeah, and then I was like, I don't know. And then, so I had maxed out all like the math classes at that high school, and I couldn't take any more math classes. So then we ended up moving, and when we moved, there was a good school by the area that we moved to, and they had the IB program, the International Baccalaureate program, and they had a lot of AP classes.
Which stands for Advanced Placement.
Yeah, and so So I started going to that school in Lakewood, Colorado, and man, those classes were hard. I remember like I had never been challenged before in school because being from a low socioeconomic background, the schools that I went to were not the best schools, and so I really wasn't challenged.
Right, good enough. Good
yeah,
job.
good enough. And so going to this school, I was like, man, this is hard. But I still finished early, and I started doing this vocational school and for nursing. And a recruiter actually approached me, you know, like that they're doing their job, going to the local schools and stuff, and asking questions and talking to students. And he was trying to be all like, oh yeah, you know about the Marine Corps, blah blah blah. And I ended up telling him like, yeah, I know about the Marine Corps, and we had a conversation and. He was like, wow, you know a lot about the Marine Corps. I was like, yeah, I was in ROTC. My brother's a Marine. And he's just like, why are you not joining the Marine Corps? I was like, I want to go to college. And he's just like...
We'll help you.
I know. But back in that day, they didn't have the post 9/11 GI Bill. That wasn't a thing. Because this was back in 2006. So...
Yeah, they just had the Montgomery GI Bill.
Yeah, they just had the regular Montgomery GI Bill. And then also, I was like, you know what? If I join the Marine Corps, I can get the hell out of here because it was
a way out.
Yes, I technically ran away. My parents signed me off at 17.
You were emancipated.
At 17, they were like, okay, if you want to do this, go. And they did that with my brother as well. And so I mean, my mom specifically was super patriotic. She was very proud and stuff. Like, we love America. But then I went from that into the Marine Corps because I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go big. I'm going to go to the toughest branch that there is. Even though I love science, there is like the other branches have like science type jobs. Like the Army has like medics, and so does the Air Force, and but for the Marine Corps is special in that they are a department of the Navy, so all of their medical and like sciencey jobs.
The Marine Corps is Department of the Navy?
Yes,
I did not know that.
Yes, the Marine Corps is the Department.
So you're
of the
in the Navy.
Don't do that because the Marines don't like that.
No, Marines don't like that. No,
that's our disconnection right there.
Yes.
So wait, so there's that. So that's a thing then. I guess.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's a huge
so it's
thing.
just
I don't find it.
It's on paper. The government branch that funds the Navy also funds the Marine Corps. Is that correct?
So we get we have a budget, but it's nowhere near like the Navy budget.
Correct.
So for example, like the DoD, the Department of Defense. There's like a budget allocated for the Army, which is the biggest. Then there's the Air Force, there's the Navy, and then we're like the little redheaded stepchild, and we get like leftovers.
Based on the history that you're describing, I think that your natural propensity would be to go into the Air Force.
Yes, you would think, right?
Right.
But because like you have to be kind of smart, and a Marine Corps and Marines are known to not maybe be the smartest.
Well, it's because of the fact that they're the first in line, right? The front line of defense.
I think the Army is the first in line.
No, the Marine Corps is
the first in, last to leave, right?
Yes.
Isn't that the thing?
Yes.
And that's come on, bro. What's
I'm
up?
in the Navy, bro. I'm in the Navy, bro.
Yeah, he's like Navy. Excuse me, I don't know about that. But then there's that.
What's the term? Grunts?
This is what drove me to the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is the toughest. And I know people are going to get on here and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. No, okay. The Marine Corps has the longest boot camp. The Marine Corps is the toughest branch. Like, it is hard. It is tough. And also, I always like, for some reason, I gravitate towards jobs that are typically not the female-ish type jobs. Right. And the Marine Corps at the time, I don't know about now, but when I went in, only about 6 to 7% of the entire Marine Corps was female. The rest was all males. And out of that 7%, a lot of those were like administrative jobs. But because of my background and because I like physics and because we always were broke and had really janky lemon cars, I was always helping my dad with the cars and fixing things. So when I took the ASVAB, which is like the entry-level test to get into the military, I scored like stupid high in mechanical. And they they were really surprised because they're like, you're a chick, and do you know that you scored high in everything except in your mechanical? You scored super high. And I was like, yeah, that's not a surprise to me. So they're like, well, you could be an aircraft mechanic. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll do that. I'll check it out. And ended up being an aircraft mechanic in the Marine Corps for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And that was for when you do aviation type jobs. Usually contracts are 4 years, but because our schooling is so long, it's a year-long schooling, and they want to get their time out of you, so they make it a 5-year contract. So I did a 5-year contract, 1 year in schooling to learn everything I needed to know, and then
Then they deployed you?
Then I got to my unit. My unit was currently on deployment.
29?
No, I was not in 29 pounds. I was at Camp Pendleton.
Oh, okay.
So I was with my unit for about a year before we actually deployed to Iraq.
What's the special? Is there a special forces
In the Marine Corps? Yeah, MARSOC, Marine Corps Special Forces.
Did you have any interaction with them?
No.
Ah.
No. So as an aircraft mechanic, I was actually a helicopter mechanic. I
always want to get down to the deep.
Yeah, no. I was a Huey and Cobra mechanic.
Cobra, that sounds dope.
Hueys and Cobras. So they're the light helicopter. It was a light helicopter squadron that I worked for.
Have you flown?
I've flown in. Yes, I've flown in Hueys before. That's actually a funny story how I flew in Hueys. I wasn't flying in like shooting or anything.
Luckily. Because you could have been.
Well, there's a certain job.
I always want to ask people in the military, did you see any action?
See, it's
but
okay.
It's like,
you know, it's a good that you,
it's really good that
it's really good that you bring that question up, because there are veterans that you can talk to and ask that question, but there's very few and far between. A lot of veterans who have deployed and gone to Iraq and gone to Afghanistan, if they actually have gone and seen things,
they don't want to talk about
it.
They
do not want to talk about it. And when the very few times that they do, they only talk about it within themselves, like amongst themselves.
And they know there's a secret code that happened.
Yeah, it's like we don't talk about that, and it's like.
How do you feel?
No, I'm
good, man.
Yeah. I've had people straight up ask me like, "Have you shot anybody?" Blah blah blah, and I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna answer your question, but also just for your knowledge,
you could get your ass kicked for this.
Please do not ask veterans like, what did you see? Did you shoot somebody? What happened? Like blah blah blah. It's just like everybody deals with their service time in different ways. I know a lot of veterans. I have friends that are veterans. I get along with veterans really well because I speak that language, right? That code. But everybody handles their experience differently.
Have people snapped, like to the point where like, what am I doing? I'm fucking killing for corporations. Has that ever happened? Have you seen that?
Of course. I've seen people, and unfortunately, not everybody is given the right tools, and not everybody has that personality where they will realize they have a problem or need to seek help. And so that's why right now we have 21 veterans that kill themselves a day here in the United States because they cannot deal or wrap their mind or feel isolated, or there's so many reasons why this happens. And it's really a shame because they go through tremendous amount of training. They go through tremendous amount of stress and deal. On the back end. And then all of a sudden, you are with your band of brothers. You are with your group of guys who you know you will take a bullet for, you will die for, and then all of a sudden you're gone. Like they're like, okay, here's your DD-215, your discharge papers, and go figure it out. And so you
feel used.
It's not that you feel used, but you feel really like lost and alone.
I saw that movie Triple Frontier with Ben Affleck and a couple of Oscar Isaac was in that too. It's a Netflix movie, but it kind of really gives you a feel. Yes, they were engaging in illegal activity post their deployment or post their military time. Yeah. But it really helped you analyze the psychology of what happens afterwards. It's just like, man, you're left on your own devices.
Yeah, you are
after this corporate machine.
Yeah, and then you have like a lot of depression and a lot of, I don't know if there's anything that that you could really do to prepare you. It's almost like being a parent. Nothing you can read all the books, you can do all the training, all this and that. But until you have that baby crying at 2 a.m. and you're
Right,
exhausted,
yeah.
you're like, what am I doing?
Right.
That's kind of how it is to be a veteran. When they tell you what to do, what to eat, what to wear, everything is told to you, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, okay, bye. And then you're like, wait. It's like all or nothing. You go from like every aspect of your day being planned out for you to absolutely nothing being planned out for you, and you have to figure it all out. I know that there's programs now that they're trying to integrate more of that prepared and give you skills and classes and all that months before you are discharged, and to try and help reintegrate and transition and go from, military to civilian life. And
See, what I think they've gotten really good at is neurohacking, but in a different way that current neurohackers do through like, herb supplements, et cetera, where people are trying to hack the potentials of the human brain. But I guess they've like broken down the psychological profile and they've figured out, maybe it spanned all the way back from the 13s or 20s or 30s or whatever when like all the wars were happening.
Yeah,
but like right, but they've broken down the human psychology, and they've whoever it is, I don't know who's in charge, but they've mastered it, and they mastered how to get somebody to submit to whatever it is that they're
agenda.
Instructing.
Are you saying like how they train military people?
And it's basically a study on how to crack the mind, right? But they haven't figured out how to patch the mind back together.
So my brother was a drill instructor, and he used to make Marines. So he knew exactly what to do, what to say, how to act, the whole thing to break them.
Find out some personal element.
There's so many, like, you could talk to him for days about all of that. But then he himself struggled when he got out, because that was such a huge part of his identity.
Orders at people.
Yeah, and then he like didn't understand, and a lot of veterans struggle. I know this because when you're in the military, you learn, hierarchy, and like when you get to a certain position of authority, when you say, okay, this needs to get done, then it gets done, right? There's no questioning, like, are you sure? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, boom, it gets done. But then you become
immediately.
You don't even have to be
effective
mean.
Immediately.
You don't even have to be like mean or anything about it. Like I remember I was a sergeant. I could be like, hey, this needs to get done. Boom. Okay, so let's get it done. But like in like the regular civilian world, there's like people's
sovereignty.
There's people's opinions, and people are like, well, why don't we do it this way, or can we do it another time, or like excuses and stuff, and you're just like, so learning how to like understand, like civilians sometimes have a hard time understanding military people, and then military people have a hard time understanding civilians. Like, well, why can't you just do it? I just told you to do it. And they're like, well, because we could do it another way, or why do we have to do it now? And then, then it starts to get into this like little bickering, and then they're like, I don't like this guy, and then they're like, well, I don't like that guy, and it's just like this whole like
egos get involved.
And that was my part, my problem with being in the Navy is that I've always tried to find the easiest way out, I guess, or the easiest way to do something to get it done. And so that was my problem in what she's saying here is that it's like they give you like this is how it's supposed to be done. But if you see that there's another way that it could be beneficial to time and saving time, it gets snickered on because it's not what the Navy wants, and it's not how the Navy wants it done. It's just like they've been doing it for so long this particular way, to where like you have, people that are like, oh, like, but why don't we do it this way? So that was my problem.
To integrate.
You didn't get told to do it that way.
Yeah, it's like you're not being paid to think, you're being paid to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's just like I have no problem doing it, but I'm just like I'm a time like I don't know. I just I like the easiest, fastest way to do something.
Yes.
That's my problem. That's my mental.
And it's, as a mechanic, there's like technical publications, and it has like step by step. Okay, you take out this screw, you do this, you do this, you do this, right? And if you were to find some other way to do it, you're like, no, that's the pub says it to do it that way.
Right.
That's how you're going to do it. You're not going to change what is written. Until you stay in long enough and you get enough rank and you get enough weight behind you where you're like, okay, there's a better way to do this.
You can submit.
You
Yeah, you
can.
And then
you
the
can,
engineer will
but
take a
yes,
look. And
yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
right.
You can,
but
but
you have to have that authority. You have to be in
to
long
have,
enough.
yeah, you have to have that authority, that patience, be in long enough, and you're like, it ain't worth it. Like I'm getting out.
And
Yeah,
I actually, when I first joined the Navy, I actually did the same job that she did. I went in and I did the reserve side of it. So I did that. I did active boot camp. I did the schooling, but then I was.
Yeah, we went to the
but-
same place for schooling, Pensacola, Florida.
So then I went out and I wasn't active, so I didn't do it on a daily basis. I did it on a monthly basis. So I kind of learned what she was doing in San Diego. More so during the summertime, I would get orders and go longer, and I would learn what she used to do. So it was pretty cool for me to have met her and been like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like I didn't work on the same helos that she did, but the concept of hydraulics and tire changing and stuff like that, like we share that same bond. Which
Yeah, I was like, dude, are you
interesting.
serious? You were? I was like, you were. And he was like, yeah, you're airframer at AM, and I was like, yeah. Like, how do you know that? He's like, I was airframer too. I was like, no way. And
really
we just
wild.
started talking. I was like, are you serious, bro? Like. That was crazy, and that's another thing. Like the military and the veteran community, I feel like we're so small sometimes. It's funny when you bump into somebody that's a vet too. There's always like something you have in common.
Right,
Like
right.
I had no idea that. Like I would ask his wife because that's who I know better. Like, what does he do? And she's like, she would tell me something, but she's like, I don't know how to really explain it. Because frankly, sometimes I don't understand, and so I didn't know. But then, like him and I, after like 2-3 minute conversation, I'm like, know exactly where he trained, what he did, what he knew. It was like, oh. You just speak the jargon, right?
Right,
You just
and
speak
the lingo.
You speak the lingo.
Like if I were to be like, dude, I'm about to go into the pit, man. I found a peacekeeper. Do you got a purple shield or not? You know exactly what I'm talking about, but you don't.
I have no idea. What,
It's just like, whoa. There's so much
crazy.
about everything.
It's pretty wild, but yeah. So I definitely understand where she's coming from when we talk about people that leave the military, and there's programs that they're doing. You know, it's like a 4 or 5 day thing, but it just doesn't seem like it's long enough for the people, especially because for as far as the Navy and the Marines go, like they go boots on ground. And I'm not saying that some Navy people don't. Like a lot of HMs, they integrate and they work with the Marines because they're the medics basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have actual Navy people who could have my rate, which is a job title.
Right.
Rate equals job.
in the Navy, not in the Marine Corps.
Right, the MOS.
MOS, yes, Military Occupational Specialty.
So you could be an airframer, but apply to go boots on the ground and actually hold a gun and shoot. And there's people in the Navy that have done that where they like did a bunch of training and then they like were MAs and they just like crossed over from being like say an airframer, and then they went and did military policing on like at the jails, the prisons, or the airports and stuff like that, or actually actually just volunteered to go into into the actual like fight.
So there, in Iraq, there was a program called the Lioness Program, where female Marines from different military occupational specialties could apply to this program, and they would be attached to grunt units. And whenever they would come across or do any kind of detainee situation, and there were females there, the male Marines couldn't search them or question them or do any of that stuff. They needed a female, right? So these females would essentially be like boots on the ground, right? I didn't get the opportunity to do that, but I did know some females that did do that. And I mean, hats off to them, because they were exposed and experienced some crazy ass shit out there, right? But you don't think as I mean, now roles are a little bit different in the military, but back then I'm talking about 06, 07, 08.
Yeah, when that's
We didn't, you know, you wouldn't think that long. 13 years ago. That was 13 years ago.
Fuck.
Yeah, right? Isn't that insane?
2008 seems like, okay, 2008.
Yeah. And in Afghanistan, they weren't called INSs. They were called the FET team. And so there are. I mean, it's weird to see how the military has changed and is changing. But I also feel like.
Do you feel that your experience in the military has given you more self-discipline in the realms of the scientific process?
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Do you ever get frustrated with other people that you're working side by side that may not have your particular background?
Abso-freaking-lutely.
So do you feel that you've maybe discovered more, or do you feel like you should be in a bit higher position than you are?
I feel like the military gave me a lot of tools, and there were tools that I've had a lot, most of my life. Coming from a tough upbringing, you just kind of have to be really
get thick
tough.
skin.
Yes, you get thick skin. It made me a really good Marine because you just do what you're told, when you're told, how you're told to do it, right? But then being like a person, it doesn't really make like a healthy, well-rounded individual sometimes. No. And when it comes to
abrasive.
Yeah, when it comes to
interpersonal communication,
interpersonal relationships,
yeah.
it can really be a damper, because people don't understand, like, why are you like this? Like, why do you talk like that?
You'll
why do you
down
act like that?
Yeah,
and it's just like, I just don't feel like dealing with this right now. I don't feel like explaining myself to you right now. And it really does put a toll on people that really don't know or understand, like, what you've been through, what you've gone through. That's why I say I gravitate towards veterans, but even within the veteran community, there's, like, I wouldn't say different levels of veterans, but there are different types of veterans, different branches and different jobs. I have friends that were like assaultmen and grunts, and like they were kicking in doors and got blown up by IEDs, right? And then they see somebody like me, and they're like, "Well, what did you do? You were a mechanic. Like, what did you see? Where did you go?" But everybody's experiences is a little bit different, and like the military right now is different than it was when I went in. Like the conflicts that they see, the jobs that they do, the places that they go, the training that they do is different than what I went through. So it's like there's also a generational veteranship. Like, like Josh and I connect a lot more because we're from like the same era, the same time. Whereas in veterans now, like the new guys right now, it's like, yeah, there's still elements that we all kind of relate to. But like what they train and what they experience and what they do is different, and they sometimes don't understand why we are the way that we are, why we're a little bit extra, a little bonkers and screwed, or screws are a little looser, because they're not going through what we went through. Right. So even within the small veteran community, there is some divide too, which is like, oh, come on now.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Like I feel that people that have been through traumatic experiences, like life or death experiences, can relate to each other more. People that have been through traumatic life and death experiences, people that have been like incarcerated, or people that have been in like front lines service, or people that have just been in the military industrial complex for multiple years. There's a certain discipline that's kind of united amongst all of them. Like either we get this done or nobody gets it done, or this gets done or nobody gets it done. So even in the creative world, I get frustrated with people that haven't gone through those intense experiences in life, just in general. And I'm just like, just waiting for, like, I don't know, the track to come back or whatever it is. It's just like, dude, I'm just, come on.
Because you feel like there's more at stake.
Yeah, I feel like, because tomorrow
like,
you could die. You could die. And what you
you
didn't get done what you needed to get done, and it was a collaborative effort. We were all supposed to work together, have this discipline to do what you said you were going to do, follow through.
Urgency.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. And I relate to that so much. That's why I love working with people that have experienced that level of discipline at some point. Yeah. I found that, like, law enforcement helps that, military helps that, but sometimes isn't even enough sometimes to instill in somebody.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
It's like, oh shit, I was the one that was supposed to tell them what to do because that's what they're used to, and it was just like, so I don't know, self-discipline is probably, I don't know, it's like David, do you follow David Goggins, or do you know who that is?
I know David.
He's been on Rogan a few times, and he like really embodies that self-discipline. It comes from within.
Yes, it's true.
Because he used to be like, what do you say, like 200 some plus or 300 some pounds twice in his life.
Oh shit.
Yeah, dude, and he lost all the weight, then did the Marines or whatever, and then like gained all the weight back, and then did the same thing over again, where he was like, oh, this isn't who I want to be. Like, I want to be back to that, like, myself again.
Yeah.
But going back to what she was saying, is just like in the different fields of the different military branches, I feel like the Navy is like crazy different compared to the Marine Corps, because like you don't necessarily get shot at and stuff like that. You're more of like in solitary confinement when you're in the Navy, because you can't fucking go anywhere.
Right.
You're on a ship.
You're on a steel box in the middle of the fucking ocean.
And it drives you crazy.
And I don't know if you ever been in the middle of the ocean, my dude, but that ain't fucking fun. Like there were many a times, and I was on the biggest ship that they have in the Navy, and there was
it's like a fucking like metal jail cell essentially.
Yeah,
well,
prison.
A giant, and like kind of comfortable.
And you could do whatever you like. You could work out like you were going out. You got your 1 hour to go out from your cell. You could go work out, right? You got out of your cell to go eat. You could do that,
right?
For me, though, it was just like that wasn't what excited me. Like sleep excited me. Like if I could find somewhere to sleep, because like you get that shit taken away from you, like big time. Because that shit needs to continuously keep moving
every day, like, all day, 24/7.
Everybody is a part of that ship to keep to keep it moving, to keep it going in the direction of which it needs to be going, right? And so for me, man, there was some times where I was just like, yeah, I could just jump off the ship and just say, fuck it.
Were there any close calls like, oh shit, we got a threat?
So we don't know that.
Oh.
If you have that job where like you're the radar guy or
they compartmentalize, right?
Right. So there's different jobs within that ship where like I met some people and they're like, yeah, like there was a plane that came like 200 yards. It was a couple Russian planes.
That's nice.
And they were just trying to test how close they can get to our ship. But we can't engage until we are engaged with, right? So there was a lot of those when I was on deployment. But we don't, as a crew, we don't know this information because it's supposed to be like, special information and stuff like that, right? So
you're on a need-to-know basis.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you're not on that top secret, if you're on that secret game, in that top secret game, like you don't know this. So like when I found this out, and I was just like, wow, that's really trippy. But yeah, man, there was a guy that like didn't want to be on the ship anymore, and he got on the other side of the rail and had to be talked back over during the deployment, and that shuts everything down. Like once somebody is like trying to harm themselves and jump off the ship, like everything is shut down, like
counselor meetings and shit.
And then like all the MAs are running out and securing everything, and like you can't see certain things. And so the ship that I was on, and I don't know because I wasn't there, but is the ship that when they found Osama bin Laden, they flew him up into a helo, and they allegedly landed on the ship that I was on, and they shut friggin' like this is what I was told is they shut everything down. Not the ship itself, the ship kept going. Everybody kept doing their job, but the levels of which you can get up to the flight deck,
it's on lockdown.
Where the whole ship was on lockdown.
People yelling at each other, get back in there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that if that happened, I don't know that it happened, but allegedly it did happen. that I wanted to be like I'm one of those people that I want to see. I want to see. Like, why you get to see?
Yeah.
Why do you get to? I want to see. If you get to see, I want to see. I get to see.
Yeah, you're still attached to your sovereignty as an individual.
And
as a person.
that's been my problem within being in the military.
You haven't fully adopted the mentality.
Hell no.
See, I was raised in a household where my dad, I guess, pretty much my stepfather, but he's my dad. You know, the one that raised me since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Was a Marine Corps. Was in the Marine Corps. So
okay.
I that's why I don't shut down with these kind of conversations.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, you kind of get it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, why,
so
why?
I like a lot of times I'm like, oh, there's not a military. So like a lot of people do that kind of stuff. I don't ever shut it because I get it. I understand it. It's just fuck, man. It's brutal to come out on the other end, but I could feel how much it benefits the individual in some cases, but I can also feel the pain that's involved with isolation and like having your psychology broken down and being viewed as less of a person than is above you just because they hold a higher rank. They are literally more of a human than you are. And
within the military, I wish that it wasn't like that because
it didn't need to be, right, in some cases.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, so
you've got younger people that are higher ranking than you.
See, that's what happened to you because
not my fault, but that's my problem.
That was an issue for you. It's really hard when you have people that join when they're older,
right?
Because then it's like, dude, you're not even legally able to drink, and you're telling me you're barking orders to me, like, get the out of here, right? I my best friend in the Marine Corps, he was like 6 years older than I was, and we were like the same rank, the same position, the same everything. But he had that attitude of like, you're not going to tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he was like a big dude and he had that attitude. Like he did do what he was told for the most part. But then he didn't like stress out about things where I was like always stressed out. Like, dude, we have to do this. Like they told us to do this. Or like when we'd have meetings, I would be taking notes and he would just be like, not even paying attention. And then afterwards he's like, what were they saying? And I was like, dude, you were in the meeting too.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but I knew you were paying attention, so I didn't have to. And I'm like, yeah, this is pretty much my military career. I'm always the overachiever. That's just how I am.
It's awesome. We're getting to the 2 hour mark, so we'll kind of like
we're wrapping it up.
Yeah, I know that you need to get out of here, so
making like a Christmas present. Like a couple things I wanted to tap into just to derail back to like the DNA kind of talk. Have you looked into Peter Gerish's work about DNA mixing like DNA and light?
No.
Photons of light, how DNA can theoretically hold photons.
Of light?
Yeah.
How DNA can hold photons of light? No.
So
I have not heard about this.
And also the DNA molecule can essentially gravitationally attract light too.
No, I have not heard about this.
It's in kind of your field.
I will look into it.
Peter Garish.
I do know that DNA has the ability to be to hold information not just like in the cellular component, but because like right now our system for computer systems is binary zeros and ones, right? 0, 1, 1, 0.
Unless it's quantum.
Whereas in DNA it's quaternary, it's 4, right?
Right.
So potentially you can like hide information within the genome. That I have heard, and I feel like that's super cool. Like there could be something there. But no, I have not heard about the DNA holding photons of light. And
Fritz Albert Pop, I think, is another one where I thought I had a note in there. I don't, but it's like I think it was like 100 photons per square centimeter. And
what are you saying? Like that it absorbs it, or that it
Well, like a plant, for example, has like 1,000. It's like 1,000 photons per square centimeter coming off of it. Like they were looking at like
how it reflects,
a leaf under a petri dish.
That it reflects that light.
Right, but it retains a certain amount too.
Yes, it actually. So plants like a leaf that's green, it is actually absorbing all the colors of the spectrum. White light that comes from the sun has all the colors,
right?
But it only reflects green.
Green back,
right?
So it's holding
it does not absorb green light,
right.
But it reflects the green light.
So that's what we see.
So that's what we see. That plants are green, but it actually utilizes all the other color light.
Right.
Yes, that was. I remember when I learned that, I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, that might
That
add
it
to your
doesn't
research
use,
too.
that does not use green light, and they are green, but it does not utilize the green light.
No.
It utilizes all the other light, all the other wave,
Photosynthesis.
all the other wave. Like photosynthesis process is actually really super interesting. The way that it can take light and carbon and pretty much create its own energy
Food source, yeah.
Yes, it creates something from nothing. It takes sunlight, and then it utilizes these little machines, the little chloroplast discs within the cells, to create sugar and use that sugar to survive during the nighttime when there is no sunlight, and produce a byproduct of oxygen,
Which we breathe. And then take in carbon dioxide.
And then take in carbon dioxide.
Flip it back again.
Take a gas.
They're the ultimate hustlers, essentially.
Yes, they take light and carbon dioxide and combine it to make sugar and oxygen. Like, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
Plants, man. That was a field that I didn't really get into until towards the end, because I'm a cellular biologist, but I do like mammalian cells. So I focus on like humans, mice models, like like that's what I mostly do my work on. But there's an entire field of plant biology. It's insane.
So there's a fringe study, right? And it's on the fringe, but there is some scientific backing that one of the sources of cancer is an absence of light within that cell, which is why some light therapy, specific light therapy, using that same exact knowledge about photosynthesis, is aiding in alleviating tumorous cancer cells through light therapy.
I actually have heard about light therapy. But so I actually work with a scientist that is an area that he focuses on, that type of stuff. But you have to be very careful because it could become a little pseudoscience-y. Like,
that's
we
what
are
I'm
not
saying.
plants.
On the fringe, it's on the fringe.
Yes, we are not plants. Right. We don't photosynthesize.
Yeah.
We don't,
Right.
But have they used light therapy for certain things? Yes, but again, we're not plants. Like, they use light therapy for babies when they what is it that they called when their bilirubin
levels are higher.
Are higher.
Right.
They do that, and then also
for
blue
jaundice.
light for jaundice. Blue light has shown to have a calming effect. So I mean, there is some merit to some light therapy, but we're not plants. We can't photosynthesize.
Are you comfortable with injecting vaccines very early on, like crossing the blood-brain barrier?
Here we go.
You can also decline to say it.
I am not an anti-vaxxer, and again, because of immunology and immunology research that I've done, exposing your body to certain antigens at an early stage can be very helpful, and we have seen almost the eradication of a lot of really detrimental and deadly diseases because of early vaccination. But there's an argument against early vaccinating or vaccinating too early or too many shots on the same day, or the response that it happens. But overall, I am pro-vaccine. So
now, are you also pro-breastfeeding?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
So again, because of immunology,
which a lot of the immunities can get passed through that.
Because yes, so you the way that adults absorb nutrients from their food is different than babies. So if we eat, let's say you eat a steak, it breaks it down to the smaller proteins and then breaks those smaller proteins into amino acids, because proteins are made from amino acids. And then those amino acids go through your gut and through the bloodstream and then get delivered to wherever they need to go in your body. However, babies have the ability to absorb entire protein complexes and go into their bloodstream.
Yeah, so it goes amino acids, proteins, cells, tissues, organs.
Yes, babies have the ability they don't need to break down those proteins, those antibodies, or
Right.
they don't need to break it down. They just absorb it. So you're essentially, a breastfeeding mom can feed her immune system, part of her immune system, to the baby. So if the mom is exposed, let's say, to a flu, and she's expressing a lot of these antibodies against the flu, and then the baby drinks that milk, that baby is getting some immunity against the flu. So if the baby's exposed to that flu virus, its response is either the immune system's going to fight off that flu, or the immune system's going to fight off that flu, and the baby's only going to have very mild symptoms.
So breastfeed
Yes, so breastfeed your babies.
before sticking a bunch of needles.
Yes.
Then it's optional after
Breastfeed your babies, but not everybody can breastfeed.
Yeah, if you can, if you
If
can.
you can't,
Do your best to
do your
make
best.
make it conditional environment
if-
so that you can.
But if you can't, you just, yeah.
Astrid,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having
being here. Yeah, it
me.
was awesome.
Full House Vibes.
Thank you
Episode
for having
7.
me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
Yeah,
Good
good
conversation.
Time. Good times, yeah, good times. I've always wanted to say that. Ever since that Saturday Night Live skit, bro.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and that's it.
Do so.
Do so.
Yo.